A friend of mine bought an iBuypower PC some time ago called Snowblind, and he gifted me an extra case that he got from them. The Snowblind has an interesting feature that makes it stand out from every other case on the market. This is a computer monitor. So they caught my interest. Let's talk about this interesting style of PC. Today, like I said in the intro, thanks to a friend of mine, I'm going to look at the Snowblind PC from iBuypower. The Snowblind was designed to allow anyone to fully customize the look of their side panel. This occurs through the use of an LCD screen built into the side glass. My friend's case must have been damaged in shipment because his screen never worked. And when he contacted iBuypower, they just sent him a new case. What a nice company. Now this case has been sitting in his house for about a year now, and he decided to give it to me to do a review on because he's too lazy to transfer the components over to his new case. But hey, that's fine with me. The Snowblind is an ATX case with 2 intake fans on the motherboard tray and 1 exhaust fan at the rear. It has no top ventilation or front ventilation. This case only comes in white and is basically one model, which is just the LCD side panel. I'm guessing it's white to allow for contrast of the glass images with the interior components. Now, of course, my friend gave me the case alone without components in it. So I had to do a full build in it, of course. His Snowblind has an i7-10700K with an RTX 3070 in it. Just kind of giving you a little bit of insight as to what components he has in it. I decided to go with something a little less power hungry and chose an i5-10600K and an RTX 3060. I'm really happy with how this PC turned out and quite surprised actually. Let me tell you what I think of this case. Let's start with the positives, and there's actually a lot of them. First thing is the temps are really good, considering there's no front airflow and no top exhaust. I did 3 different tests to be able to run through this computer and see what it could do. The first test I ran is Cinebench R23. What this does is puts 100% load on all the CPU cores and creates a lot of heat around the CPU area. For this test, the GPU doesn't get any kind of stressing on it, so it's not creating any heat, but the CPU got up to 83 Celsius. I'm not sure if that's the case having the problem or the CPU cooler that I used itself. You gotta remember the case's airflow is only the 2 120 mil fans in the front and the 1 exhaust fan in the rear here. Now I like to think that I created a nice flow pattern because it's got the air coming in from the outside. It flows straight through the CPU cooler once it hits that glass, obviously, and then it comes straight out the back. But the rest of the benchmarks have a lot better temperatures. Unigine Heaven is the second test that I ran. This stresses the GPU, so I maxed out a lot of the settings at 1080p, and the results are pretty impressive. The CPU's temperature during Unigine Heaven only got up to 44 Celsius, and the GPU's got up to 54 Celsius. The GPU, after all, is only an RTX 3060, and the Tough Gaming's cooler that's on this thing is pretty much the same cooler across all their range of GPUs, even the 3080. During gaming, it was even more impressive. The CPU only got up to about 58 Celsius under a 40% load, which is not too bad actually. And the GPU was at 56 Celsius, and that's 100% load in gaming. Another positive is the case has a really nice aesthetic. I mean, white builds always look good in my eyes. I've never seen a bad white build. Even with the black components, it looks good. Dust management is really amazing because the rear intake on this thing is just a couple slots, and then it's got a dust filter clipped into the back here. So those 2 intake fans have a filter on them, and your 1 exhaust fan doesn't need a filter because all your airflow is coming out this direction. Another thing I really liked is building in it was super easy. There's plenty of space for cable management in the back, and getting the components in was a breeze. The screen stats on here are helpful, but the amount of people that are actually gonna pay attention to this are actually really small, and it's kind of gimmicky if you ask me. A cool thing about the screen is that all you have to do is hinge it forward and it turns off and disconnects. So you just slide it out and that's it. Now you have to be delicate with this screen because not only is it the screen, but it's also a glass panel as well. So I think that's how my friends got damaged in shipment. As you can see, the computer looks great inside, and all the white paneling reflects RGB really nicely. The last thing I really liked on this is the beveled pass-throughs All of the cable pass-throughs have like a bevel to them. They're not real sharp or anything like that. So when you pass your cables through, I mean, you're not gonna be building in this, they built it for you. But I can appreciate the design that they did with the beveled pass-throughs because it's not gonna create any kind of chafing. So of course, every case is not without their flaws. I think that for the premium that they're charging for this case, they should put some kind of rubber grommets around those pass-throughs. I know people aren't gonna be building in this, it's just them building in it, but it would hide the cables a little bit better and you could design white rubber pass-throughs, right? Another thing that's a negative, and it's the reason my friend got this case in the first place, the screen is very delicate. I mean, you can see moving it and flexing it, it creates little hot spots on the screen as soon as you get any kind of moisture down in there, and that could of course short it out or damage it in the shipping process. Another thing that I don't like, and this is only in my instance because I installed Windows unactivated, you can't get rid of the taskbar at the bottom of the screen here. It's only because Windows is not activated. So it's really just a me problem, not a you problem. Another thing that I really don't like is there's no airflow coming from the front and there's no airflow coming out of the top for exhaust. I did say the temps are good, but I feel like adding a little bit of ventilation to that would just help with higher end components that people may want to put in this case. And I don't know what my friend's PC has as far as temps go. I've never gotten to take a look at it. Maybe I should have him bring it over so I can see what kind of temperatures he's running with those more high-end components. Because I forgot to mention, he's also running a liquid cooler when it comes to the front of his case there. He's got a 240 mil AIO cooling his CPU. I don't know what that's gonna do for the intake temperatures and then for the GPU temperatures because of the blockage. Another problem I ran into with my build is I would suggest picking all white components in this case. My CPU cooler is black, the GPU is black. That blocks a lot of the viewpoints from those gauges. You would need all white components for that contrast, like I said, to be able to see those gauges at any angle, depending on where you leave your computer. The gauges tend to disappear when they're viewed over anything other than white parts. You need that contrast. The last complaint I have, and this is really the biggest one and the reason I would steer clear of this case, honestly, is the software is a pain in the ass. You need to do so much to be able to make this thing work, and it took me all afternoon to get everything installed, downloaded, and set up properly. So the first thing you need is the third-party Rainmeter software. Rainmeter is pretty outdated now. It's been around for a long time, but they're using it to put these gauges on this screen. Then the second thing you do is download the skins for Rainmeter from iBuypower's website. Once you download the skin, you need some kind of software to unzip the skin from their file. They created a zip file. I'm not sure why. It's really not a big file, so it doesn't make sense to me. But you need something like 7-zip. If you don't already have that installed on your computer, I'll leave a link below for it. It's free, but you have to have it to unzip the file for the skin of the software. That makes sense? Yeah, I know, it doesn't. Then another thing you need is more additional software. You need Core Temp to be able to read the CPU, and you need MSI Afterburner to be able to read the GPU information. So it's just more software you have to install to make this work. And for anyone that's never done anything like this before or is not real tech savvy, you're gonna have to be able to read their instructions, and they're so poorly written. It's very generic and very bland and does not give you in-depth instructions. You know, download this, click this, unzip this, install this. It doesn't walk you through all that. It just tells you to do it. So as far as being in-depth and kind of step-by-step, it's not there. Okay, what are my final thoughts for the Snowblind case from iBuypower? When it works, it's a cool effect. But honestly, it's too much of a hassle to make it worth it for me. The case itself isn't bad. It's got decent airflow and nice aesthetics. But unfortunately, the cheapest build you can put in this thing is $1,200 USD. And it gives you an i3 12100F, 8 gigs of RAM, and an RX 6500 XT. For $1,200, it's kind of a ripoff. So you're really just paying for the gimmick, honestly, of the screen that's built into the glass. Are you interested in something with better performance for less money than the Snowblind here? Then check out these videos next, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And as I always say, I'm Danny with Danny's Tech Channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe it's something